Hey everyone, John here! And the Nintendo Switch 2 trailer dropped an interesting notice about backwards compatibility, and I'm not entirely sure that the conclusion that most people are coming to will be the reality of what we get. But first, let's just read the actual statement itself. Nintendo Switch 2 plays both physical and digital Nintendo Switch games. Certain Nintendo Switch games may not be supported or fully compatible with Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo Switch Online members can continue using the service on Nintendo Switch 2. And there's some interesting wording in there, such as fully compatible rather than just, not working at all. But we'll get to that. So why do I think that the running theory may not be correct? Well, most people are coming to the conclusion that Switch 2 won't work with IR games that use this camera on the bottom of the Joy-Con. And I think it's definitely accurate to say that the new Joy-Con will not work with IR games because they don't have an IR camera, but then introduce the Nintendo Switch Lite, which also does not have an IR camera. And to get around this, you simply just take a regular Joy-Con and sync it to the Lite, and then suddenly this can play anything that a regular Switch can, other than being docked. And so I don't really see a reason that you couldn't just sync an old Joy-Con to the Switch 2. Obviously, the new Joy-Con will not work in IR games, and so you'll have to do that. So games such as Ring Fit Adventure, which has a double problem, this thing connects to the Ring-Con using a rail, and then it uses the IR camera as well, so that would not work at all with the new Joy-Con. Labo, it uses the IR camera for practically everything. That would not work with the new Joy-Con. And Brain Training, that uses the IR camera for gestures with your fingers. It counts things. So obviously that would not work with the new Joy-Con. But Nintendo have a history of allowing you to use your old controllers. Even on the Switch they do. Let's go back to the Wii though. That has GameCube backwards compatibility, and you can use GameCube controllers in your Wii games, a lot of them anyway. Wii U, that has Wii backwards compatibility. You can use your Wii controllers both in Wii games and Wii U games. And then the Switch, it has a GameCube to Switch USB adapter, which is built for Smash, but it works for everything. The GameCube controller is just recognized as a Pro controller. You can use that in any game you like. And what's fascinating is games that have leftover code for analog triggers, they recognize the GameCube controller fine. So for a bunch of racing games, you can actually get full-on analog acceleration by using a GameCube controller, and I find that really fascinating. And there's also a notice in there about NSO carrying forward. We knew this, but it's in the backwards compatibility statement, meaning all those apps will work perfectly fine. NES, Super Nintendo, N64. And with those apps, you should also remember that they have their own controllers that were sold, and they are rail controllers built for the Switch 1. And what's really fascinating is not that long ago, we had a rail USB charger release, which always felt weird, especially the time frame, because why would you release that like 7 or 8 years into the Switch's life? But if there's no way to attach rail controllers to the Switch 2, then suddenly that makes a lot of sense for your NSO controllers and also your Joy-Con. I don't really see any reason why they'd allow you to play all your backwards compatible games, basically the entirety of the Switch library, but then say, no, you can't use your old controllers for those. You can't attach old Joy-Con or old Pro controllers. Like, it feels odd that they would do that. If the entire library is going to be brought forward, then your controllers probably will be as well. And we can see this on the PlayStation 5, for instance. You can use your DualShock 4 for every PlayStation 4 game. And some games that actually require the light sensor on the back, like Astrobot Rescue Mission, they outright need you to use a DualShock 4. It will tell you the DualSense will not work for this game on the start menu. And so I'm pretty sure that these IR camera games will do the exact same thing. They'll just say, hey, if you want to boot this up, please connect a Joy-Con 1. Otherwise, these will not work. And so, okay, if they will be perfectly fine, then what isn't compatible? What's not fully compatible? And I turn my gaze to the dimensions of the Switch body, right? The Switch 1 is smaller than the Switch 2. And so you look at things like Labo VR, you couldn't fit a Switch 2 in there. So that won't be compatible. You won't be able to fit your Switch 2 into many Labo frames, in fact. You've got things like the Labo Bike and the Labo Piano, which are meant to rest your Switch screen in, and that's not going to be possible with the Switch 2. So Labo VR itself, I think that is the core game that will not be compatible. But then you look at many other games that supported Labo VR, and they will not be fully compatible. Mario Odyssey had a Labo VR mode. Breath of the Wild had a Labo VR mode. Captain Toad had a Labo VR mode. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate had a Labo VR mode. There's quite a few games there which technically will not be fully compatible with Switch 2. Those VR modes just frankly will not work. So Labo VR software, not compatible. Labo VR modes, not fully compatible. And that might be all it extends to. There may be a few just weird outlier games that aren't compatible for reasons that we don't know. That's certainly the case on PS5. I don't know why you can't boot up Last Guardian VR. That should perfectly work, but it tells you can't do it. But this is all to say that I think backwards compatibility will be pretty robust. There's just a few games that do require the actual physical dimensions of a Switch 1, and that is mostly just Labo stuff. So what do you think about this? Do you think the IR camera games are going to be supported? Personally speaking, I don't see any reason you couldn't just sync a Joy-Con one. And there are games like Resident Evil Revelations 2 that have IR, but it's not necessarily a big part of the gameplay. You can ignore that entirely. So it would be weird to make that game not compatible when IR is a completely optional thing, right? So anyway, I will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching, and we love each and every one of you, even that one there. See you later. Bye.